You're listening to the Healthy in Real Life podcast, episode number 182. Hey friends, welcome back to the show. This is Gina, creator of the Fitnessista blog and brand. I'm so excited that you're here today. Thank you so much for tuning in and really excited about today's episode with Hannah Wendt. Before we head into that, I wanted to tell you guys about We Feed Raw. So I've been making Maisie's food since she was a baby. She's our mini sheepadoodle and I absolutely love making it. But the ingredients are really expensive and also it's of course time consuming, but I love to do it. But I was really excited when I came across We Feed Raw because they have human grade meat. It also has organs in there and you can use it either if you make your own dog food. So I mix it with all of the other ingredients that we use, or you can feed it to your dog plain. I had been so curious about raw food for dogs, but I was a little bit intimidated and they just really make the process so simple and streamlined. But the best part is that there's no artificial ingredients or fillers or preservatives, and dogs go absolutely crazy for it. So I'll use it in Maisie's homemade dog food as the meat. It saves me a trip to the farmer's market and it's also less expensive, which is great. And also I can give it to her plain. So sometimes she'll just eat it plain as a topper on top of her kibble. They also have a raw dehydrated kibble, which is another great option if you're looking for a healthier kibble option. So I feel like we care so much about what we feed our children and what we feed ourselves, but our furry friends are such an important part of our family. And just like us, what they eat can impact their hormones, immune system, energy levels, and it makes such a huge difference for them. Even as far as things go like digestion and dental health, it's a game changer. So definitely head to We Feed Raw. Right now my discount code is Fitnessista40 when I'm recording this episode for 40% off your starter kit. I'm not sure how long it will last. It might go down to 30%. So try Fitnessista40. And if it works, yes. And if it has changed, it's Fitnessista30. That will be my default code. So that one gets you 30% off your starter kit. But I hope that your pet loves it just as much as Maisie does. And let's head into today's episode. So today I am chatting with Hannah Wendt, and she is an epigenetics enthusiast and the director of operations at True Diagnostic, where she's helped implement large-scale methylation testing for clinical practices and is the co-author of several upcoming studies about interventions to address biological aging. She's had a lifelong passion for longevity and breakthrough disruptive technologies that drive radical improvement to the human condition. She is also the host of Everything Epigenetics, where she shares insights on how DNA regulation has an impact on your health. You can listen to her podcast, connect with her on Instagram, and head to True Diagnostic if you're interested in doing this testing for yourself. But I'm so excited that she's here today. Thank you so much for chatting with me and welcome to the show, Hannah.
Welcome to the Healthy in Real Life podcast, bite-sized tips for healthy living that you can implement right now. Join us weekly for interviews and real-life advice for creating the happiest and healthiest version of yourself. Here's your host, fitness expert, author, and mom of two, Gina Harney.
Hey, Hannah, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Gina. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you too. Would you mind just sharing a little bit of info about yourself and your background and how True Diagnostic came to be?
Yes, absolutely. I am a big nerd ever since I was a little girl. I think back to when I was outside, always playing in the dirt, the mud, flipping over rocks and, catching lightning bugs and keeping them, and all of the kind of researching and looking at all the cycles of life and understanding the ecosystem and the environment I was surrounding myself with. So I know I wanted to do something that involved science, and I've always been extremely motivated to do better in the world, whether it be with a new invention or enhancing really people's lives. So I always had this entrepreneur type of spirit as well. And originally from north of Dayton, Ohio, a really small town, I then came to Lexington, Kentucky, to University of Kentucky, and wanted to be a veterinarian, then changed to just general undergrad biology and took a interesting path and did a lot of cell signaling labs. I realized I didn't like bench work and wanted to work with humans more. So I really became interested in genetics and genetic counseling. So having that science piece, but also working with people My path took another really big turn right outside of college after I took a super unique position at one of the top pharmacies in the world at that time that really pioneered peptides and the use of peptides in the cash pay medicine space. So that's the one moment where it's hard to imagine my life before that, because I was now introduced to more of this healthcare model rather than this sick care model. So these integrative functional medicine providers who are really focusing on longevity and increasing health span and lifespan. So that's really how I got into this space. We created True Diagnostic because we wanted to look at one measuring stick or tool, thus biological aging, to really prove the effectiveness of a lot of the drugs that we were selling at the pharmacy at the time.
Okay, that's really interesting. And it's interesting that you brought up peptides too, because I feel like they're all the rage right now. Like everyone's talking about peptides. So yeah, it's just, I think the potential with that is huge, and I'm excited to see where that goes. But for my friends out there who are listening, who are just like new to this topic, how would you explain epigenetics in simple terms?
Yes, let me break it down even down to the word itself. So epi is a Greek prefix. It actually means above or on top of. So we are just looking above or on top of your DNA, your genes. Epigenetics is everything. It accounts for about 80% of all of your health outcomes. It's really how you're interacting with your environment. It is your behavior. It's what you ate this morning, if you worked out or not, if you are drinking coffee, Red Bull, Celsius, or if you're drinking a lot of water and teas. All of these different signals that we're giving our body are causing our genes to be turned off, and they're causing our genes to be turned on. So even if you are thinking, oh, wow, this is a really interesting topic, or if you're like, ugh, this is so boring, let me get on with my day, as you're listening, all of those thoughts that we're having are going to affect how we express our genes. And this is fairly intuitive to understand, right? Because you could imagine someone who's really sick with a chronic disease or even cancer, they're going to be expressing their genes much more differently than someone who is extremely healthy. So that's really what we're measuring. And I'll say one last thing about that, Gina, as well. It's not necessarily a goal to have all of your genes turned on or turned off. It is about this balance, because we want some genes turned on, like our tumor suppressor genes, so genes that are going to help us fight tumors, but we want a lot of genes turned off too, like our cancer genes. So it's all about, well, how can we prove or exercise certain lifestyle interventions, supplements, medications, procedural-based therapies, to express our genes from an optimal standpoint.
Okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. That was a really good breakdown too. I think that it's empowering to hear that too, because I think so often you hear that your genes are your destiny, but you really can control how they express themselves through your habits. So I think that's huge. And you're giving people tangible information that they can use to affect their habits and decide how they're going to go about their day, and maybe make different choices about what they're eating and drinking and things like that. So can you share some of the things that True Diagnostic tests for, and then also how it determines someone's biological age? Because of course your biological age is different from your chronological age.
Of course. Yeah. Now I'll add one more thing too. You mentioned the DNA isn't your destiny, right? And we're seeing all these things on social media that are saying, you are what you eat, food is medicine, again, your DNA is not your destiny. And they're all indirectly explaining epigenetics without explicitly stating epigenetics too. So I think that's a really cool point that you brought up. And it is very exciting because we're now in the driver's seat of our own health. We have the choices. We're given that control to actually understand how things we're doing are going to affect these outcomes we're able to produce. So that leads to your next question. Well, what can you predict with epigenetics? And we can really almost predict anything. I would say we're limited by two things, which is the size of the data set we have and our imagination, really. But what this became super popularized in is measuring biological age. So that is what we are really known for. It's how people hear about us. We have our flagship product called True Age that we've been offering since about 2020, so for almost 5 years now, which is crazy to say. And this is super important because aging is the number one risk factor for all-cause mortality and morbidity. Meaning, if you have an increased biological age compared to your chronological age, you are going to have a higher chance of developing chronic disease or passing away. And what does this all really mean? Well, it's all rooted in the science, but it's the idea that we have our chronological age, right? Which is how old we are. This only increases as time goes on, and it's how many candles you're blowing out of your birthday cake once a year. Whereas biologically, we are all aging on a cellular level. And it's why you go back to class reunions and look around and everyone is the same age chronologically, just about, give or take a year. But some people look way older and you're like, oh, what happened to you? Or some people look way younger and you're like, I want your skincare routine. Tell me everything you're doing. That's the difference there, is that chronologically, we may, of course, we're spending more time on this earth, but physically, internally, we may be younger, and that's what the biological age is.
Yeah, I think that's important to know too. I forget what I saw, but it was something online. It was like when you turn 40, it becomes more apparent of like who's taking care of themselves up until they're at that point and who hasn't. But it is true. Like it makes such a huge difference. And this is something that maybe you can share some insight on, but anytime I've done like similar kind of tests in the past, my chronological age and my biological age have been about the same, which has been devastating to me because I feel like I work really hard to eat well, exercise, manage stress, do all the things. So what tips do you have for someone who might be in a similar situation?
Definitely. That's a good question, Gina. I can tell that you may be more of a competitive person. You're like, oh, I just, I'm doing all the right things. I need to see these results. What's going on? Well, first and foremost, there's many different biological age clocks out there. We call these measurements clocks. It's kind of fun. So first off, there are many ways to measure biological age, right? Grip strength, gait speed, VO2 max, things like certain neurocognitive exams and scores can give you back an age. You can even take a blood test and it could give you a biological age. But I want to make a note here that I will be just talking about epigenetic biological age interpretations. We believe this is the most accurate, precise, sensitive, and reliable way to report out biological age because it's the most predictive of health outcomes, which is the point of a biomarker, right? And these biological age clocks, they're really just biomarkers as it relates to our overall health. So to your question, well, what happens if I'm testing, I'm doing everything right, and my biological age and chronological age look the same? Well, Gina, what I would call those overarching biological ages are historical based biological age clocks. So they're really capturing something that's happened across your entire lifetime, right? Which then begs the question, right? When did we start getting into our health journey, our fitness journey? Yes. But there are ways that you can actually separate what has happened historically and what's going on now. And that's one of my favorite biological age outcomes. We actually call it a pace of aging. It's called the Dunedin pace of aging, which is more of a speedometer. So it can tell you how quickly you're aging, the past 3 to 6 months, and it separates that historical context to say, hey, Gina, are you going in the right direction or are you not? And I bet that would look pretty good on you if I had to guess.
Okay, that's reassuring to hear. And I think that would be motivating for a lot of people too, because they're like, okay, I just changed my health a year ago, but leading up to that, I never exercised. I was super stressed. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So it's like they can see that what they're doing is making a difference. And I think that can motivate them to stick with it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think it can be very motivating. I think too, you see a lot of times on social media, I decreased my biological age by 10 years, or I'm 13, I'm 15 years younger. We don't see those really, really drastic reductions in a lot of the biological age clocks that work very well, and the ones that we offer. It's really hard to get a reversal of even a couple of years. So the fact that you're even kind of level set with your chronological age may be giving us a hint that you're going in the right direction, right? I wonder if you would have tested a couple years ago or even prior to that, maybe you would have been a lot higher, right? And we're starting to see you chop away at your biological age. So women in general, though, they tend to be much younger biologically than men. We know men have accelerated aging, so that's something to note that you may start to notice in the results as you test.
Yeah. Accelerated internal aging, but their skin looks good for so long. They use like shampoo to wash their face. So
I was gonna say they use a Dove soap bar to scrub their
totally.
face and their hair and their body.
Yes, it's so true. So I imagine you've seen the results of many of these tests. You have a ton of data. What would you say is the most surprising or exciting thing that you've seen from all of the tests that you guys have ran?
The most surprising or exciting thing, let me answer that very intuitively at first. So it's maybe not the most surprising or exciting, but it's the one thing that's just rooted in science. I think we expect a different answer every single time, right? We want that magic fix. We want the easy thing to do. But we did a really groundbreaking study with Yale that looked at over 50 plus epigenetics studies, interventional based studies in humans, and they really categorized these interventional studies into 4 groupings. So it was lifestyle medicine, things like exercise, stress reduction routines, diet, and sleeping. And then we did supplements as well, pharmacological interventions, so medications, and then larger interventional treatment plans like hyperbaric oxygen chamber therapy, blood transfusions, etc. And the one thing that moves the needle the most, or the category that moved the needle the most, is lifestyle medicine, which again isn't super surprising, isn't groundbreaking. I still think it's very, very exciting because those are things that are free, they're easily accessible to us, and I have yet to meet anyone who is completely perfect in that area. So it's very reassuring that we can start small and see really, really large effects. So people who were, eating a better diet, they were increasing their physical exercise, reducing stress, or getting better sleep, saw the largest changes within their biological age metrics. So I'll pause there, and then I can go into something a little bit more exciting too. But I think that's, very hopeful.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think that a lot of the times people think they have to make these huge sweeping changes, but that's just a testament to the fact that you can start small and build up from there. Like you said, just focus on getting better sleep, go for a walk every day, eat more vegetables. Like there are little things that you can do in your routine that really will add up over time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if there are people out there who really want to biohack or do N of 1 precision-based medicine, the biological age test is a really good test for that. Again, coming back to the fact that aging's that number 1 risk factor for all-cause mortality and morbidity, this testing can be used as a before and after to measure the effectiveness of that therapeutic, right? So instead of wasting a lot of money on supplements or doing a lot of guesswork or, looking at these really large populational based studies, that's a populational based studies. It's really telling you what they found within that group, but you're a very unique individual, right? All of our epigenetics are super unique to ourselves because of our behavior and our environment. It doesn't change, or it doesn't stay the same person to person. It is extremely variable, and a lot of times that's not captured within those larger trials. So for I recommend people doing this testing. Maybe they take metformin, right? Maybe they retest 2 months later. Maybe they take a baseline and they go on a GLP-1, right? And they test 2 months later to see if things are going up and down. Of course, without trying to change too much on the back end, right? You want to control for those variables, but that's why this testing is super exciting.
Oh, that's amazing. And can you just share some of the markers that you guys test for and how many different markers there are and the like SNPs and the gene mutations and things like that?
Sure. Yeah, so we're not testing any genetics. We're not testing any SNPs, those SNPs, or any genetic positions. So those genes are going to tell you your true genetic variations, and those aren't changeable. Those only account for about 20% of your entire health makeup. So we're not actually looking at that. We're looking at those kind of on and off switches of those genes, which is going to be changeable. But we're looking at about 1 million of those in the laboratory. So very, very many. There's about 28 million, though, in every single cell in your body. So again, the amount of data that you can gather is just huge. What we do, though, is we don't just give you those 1 million positions. That would be way too much information. So we are using our published, publicly available algorithms to actually interpret that information and report out on different things to make this as clinically applicable as possible. So, for example, we give you back a multitude of different biological ages. One of the outcomes is called Symphony Age that we created with Yale, which is the aging of 11 different organ systems. So we measure your heart age, your brain age, your liver, lung, musculoskeletal, metabolic, immune cell, and a couple others like heart. I don't think I mentioned that one, but there's 11 total. And that's really, really interesting because then you could start to say, oh, wow, my brain age is the oldest organ in my body. I need to start doing neurocognitive functional scores, or I need to increase my brain activity to try and decrease that biological age of the brain.
Okay, that's really fascinating. And do you guys give tips based off of the results that they receive? So you give like lifestyle hacks based off of their results that they can use to improve it next time?
Absolutely. All of the results are going to have actionable insights, which the user can follow. So they're really we have really friendly consumer reporting, and we'll give you steps to hopefully have better outcomes and to retake the test. I mentioned you could retake the test in as little as just 2 months. Most people on average, I would say, retest every 6 months though. And then once they're very used to this kind of cadence and they understand how their body is really moving from an epigenetic standpoint, they may start to test for maintenance at least once a year.
Okay, that's not bad. So you mentioned 1 million things. So how much blood do you need for this test? And is it the blood drop card or do you need to go to a lab?
Yeah, we just need a finger prick blood spot card. So you're talking about 10 drops or so. It's a little bit of a quarter size blood spot card, just one of them that you need to fill out. So we provide you a couple lancets. We make it really easy and simple on you. And then you can ship the sample back to our lab in Lexington, Kentucky. And once we receive that sample, you will get your results back in about 2 to 3 weeks from the time it hits our laboratory.
That's amazing. So the turnaround is pretty fast then.
Yes.
So question for you, do you see any common mistakes that you think people make when they're trying to quote biohack or improve longevity? You ever see some things that like people are doing online and you're like, that's actually not working. That's doing the opposite of what you wanted to do.
The one thing that comes to mind, I think, there's 2 things in particular, if you don't mind, that I think would be really fun to talk about. Number 1 would be supplements. Oh, so many darn supplements out there. It's like, it makes my head want to explode, right? Where do you even start? Well, I will tell you from the study that I mentioned earlier that we did, from a biological aging standpoint, if you're already a rather healthy individual, right? And Gina, your podcast, Healthy in Real Life, I'm assuming most people are going to be, healthier, right, than the average American listening in. Most people who are taking care of their body, they're doing most of the lifestyle factors correctly, or at least trying to. They're not going to greatly impact their biological age from the intake of all of these different kinds of supplements. Okay, so I think that's huge. I think there's a lot of wasted money in the supplement space when they're really cheap to manufacture, they're really cheap to make, and you have to find a trusted brand that you like that is reasonably priced, because the supplement industry is a very unregulated space as well, right? Nothing has to go through, no supplements have to go through any type of approval. There are a lot of studies out there that actually look at supplement companies and they'll test the ingredients in them, and they will either have, number one, a wildly different ingredient entirely in the supplement that you're not aware of, or number two, they're going to have an extremely varying different amount than what is actually noted on the label. And that's really scary, right? Just because of that unregulated space. So that's the first one.
Yeah.
I would mention that definitely comes to mind. The second one I would say is, I know probably a lot of your listeners, you mentioned earlier before we hopped on, are women, probably. And I think, it's really hard out there because a lot of the biohacking is only talked about in the lens of men's health. And I think it's hard, right? There's fewer studies on women. There needs to be more randomized control trials on women. For example, a lot of people love to do ice baths. Women actually can't handle that cold of water, right? We could still do ice baths in a sense, but they have to be at a little bit of a higher temperature. We actually respond better to sauna as well. So there are experts in this space, like Dr. Stacy Sims, for example, who's amazing and kind of talks about those differences, right? But I think being able to pay attention to that, what's really meant for you as an individual in your body is super important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The bioindividuality is huge. With the supplements, I see it all the time. People taking so many supplements that they don't need, or taking supplements for things that are already high in their body and they don't know. So things like zinc and copper are huge. Probiotics, a lot of people take probiotics, like crazy amounts of probiotics, and they have gut bacterial overgrowth. So I'm like, you're feeding all the bacteria in your gut right now. Just little things like that. And it's interesting that you mentioned the cold plunging, because that's one thing that I see on social media all the time. And I'm like, just stop with the cold plunging. And like, especially if you're stressed, you have autoimmune type issues. It's just really jarring on the nervous system. And sauna can feel so much better, and you can have similar benefits without having to go through all of that. So I don't think that the cold plunging feels good. So I think that sauna feels so much better personally anyway. So I love that you said that. I agree wholeheartedly. So I would love to ask you about where you see the future of health optimization going in the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, where do I see the future of health optimization going? It's a really timely question, because we're starting to see a lot of companies created because these consumers are being more proactive about their own health, right? So by that, what do I mean? Well, the testing's getting better. It's getting more predictive. It's getting more reliable. It's becoming way more accessible to people too, meaning you're getting a lot of data at a relatively cheap cost in the comfort of your own home with just a couple drops of blood. But what I think is really going to start to change in the next 5 to 10 years is what that data can actually tell us. Right now, and I think biohackers previously would take every single test that they could. And, maybe they would save their results in a Google Drive or, file them somewhere. But it's basically impossible, I think, for any human being to ingest all of that information from like a PDF or paper standpoint. So what are we seeing nowadays? Well, we're seeing a ton being done with AI. We think the emergence here at True Diagnostic with epigenetics and AI is going to solve so many health problems. We really even value AI as a company here at True Diagnostic. We have these days called AI Fridays, where once a week we all get together and we're watching videos, we're all teaching each other stuff, more as it relates to like business optimization, but we're even doing some really cool things on the back end to create apps and interactive user journeys to make this information in terms of the science and the data as interpretable as possible. There are a lot of studies out there as well that actually say that AI as a standalone, even without your healthcare provider, does a better job in terms of addressing health concerns than your healthcare provider. And that's okay. I think when people first hear that, it sounds very scary. Was personally very scared of AI until I started to really understand it a bit more. Healthcare providers were not meant to ingest all of that data, right? And be experts in that. They're not biostatisticians, they're not bioinformaticists. They are human, and they went to school to really treat people and help them get better. So that's what they're there for, right? We can give the machine, we can give AI all of your data to actually make and start to understand some of these findings. But I think a good exercise just to understand how powerful AI could be is to just close your eyes real quick and think of when the last time your healthcare provider actually asked just how you were, right? How are you? How are you doing, Gina? How's life, right? And I think that in and of itself is almost kind of a wake up call, because outside of your significant other or your best friends and family members, the most important relationship with anyone in your life should absolutely be your healthcare provider next. And I think they could start to be more of that partner with you once we start to see AI become more involved.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I felt the same way. AI freaked me out when it first started to become popular. But I was listening to a podcast and she said that you can start to embrace AI or you can become obsolete. Like you have two choices because everyone else is using it. So if you don't get on board, like you're going to be left behind kind of thing. But it's really incredible all the things you can do. And what you mentioned about from a healthcare standpoint, I was in a Facebook group and someone posted that they uploaded their blood work results to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT gave them recommendations to improve their markers, whereas their doctor was just like, hey, everything looks fine, here you go, and didn't give them any additional information or steps they could take. So I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, I agree. It's going to be cool to see what continues to happen with AI. And also the healthcare provider thing, I agree 100%. Your doctor's so important, and it took me a long time to find one that really is like the full package. And she is more of a like Western type of healthcare provider, but she appreciates my crunchy ways and she respects it. But she'll ask about like, what are you doing like with your friends? Are you doing anything in the community? Are you still singing? Are you still going to church? Like she wants to know about like your life, which I think is really cool. So they do exist. You just have to search a little bit sometimes.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So the title of the podcast is Healthy in Real Life. What's something that you do in your own routine to create a consistent, sustainable, healthy lifestyle for yourself?
Well, I'll explain my perfect morning and what that looks like when I end my routine. I travel a lot for fun and for work, but it's I really get thrown off, I would say, when I travel. I'm trying to do a better job of incorporating this perfect morning routine, I call it, when I'm on the road. But what it typically would look like, and I almost got all the way there this morning, is waking up around 5:30, 6 a.m., eating a little something, getting a couple calories inside of me before I go ahead and do my workout, go to the gym. I usually do weight training. If I'm in the mood, maybe I'll do some endurance training as well. I'll come back. I will do my transcendental meditation for about 25 minutes. That really just gets me set for the day. It helps me ground myself. Then I'll cook a good high protein breakfast. I'm usually doing a couple eggs, some veggies in there with some type of like chicken sausage. And while I'm eating, I will do a whole page of journaling, which again gets me ready, gets me started for my day. And I forgot to throw in there that while I'm working out, while I'm getting moving around, getting breakfast ready, I also try to drink a really large thing of water. I always do that. Just try to do that before I drink my caffeine or my coffee. I usually make a protein coffee or something on my way to work, and drink that after I've had, a lot of water and a full meal. So that's really what I do to stay healthy in real life. I'm not always perfect, but I do know when I follow that routine in the morning, it sets me up for success for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I love all of those things too. Is transcendental meditation, is that when they give you your personal mantra, like based off of, okay, I have one of those too. We did it in yoga teacher training. Yeah, and it really is so peaceful and calming. And if you guys aren't familiar with it, it's based off of where and when you were born. So you get your own sound, and it's based off of the sound the earth was making when you were born. So it's pretty cool. So where did you get yours?
So I was in Lexington.
Okay.
I went to the TM Transcendental Meditation facility here. So they had one in Lexington, and it was really easy. I think you can do it all through an app now, basically. And it used to be, I think, like you'd have to go 5 days a week in person. But yeah, I did it all on the app, and then I just went in once a day. Sue, she taught me there at the center and then gave me my little mantra, and I even have it in the app where, again, it's just usually 23 minutes in the morning, 23 minutes at night, if you can make time for it. And then it's amazing. It's made a world of a difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if anyone's interested in checking this out, going to True Diagnostic, getting their numbers back, how would they proceed from here? Where do they need to go?
Definitely. So just go to truediagnostic.com. It's TRU, and then diagnostic is singular. I'm actually wearing one of our hoodies today, if you can see and you're watching. And then just check out our website. So I definitely recommend doing the TRH test to get started, get a baseline, receiving those results back, reading through the report, understanding where you may have some deficiencies and where you can really improve, and then getting a retest in the next 6 months or so. But if you have any questions, you can always reach out. I'm just Hannah at truediagnostic.com.
Okay, perfect. And is that the best place to contact you? Or are you on Instagram as well?
Yes, I'm on Instagram. So I haven't posted in quite a while, but I actually have my own podcast called Everything Epigenetics, where I talk with researchers and leaders in the space more about the science behind these epigenetic markers and really what they mean. And you can follow me on Everything Epigenetics on Instagram too.
Okay, perfect. So I'll include links to all of those in the show notes so you guys can find Hannah and connect with her and check out True Diagnostic. It's an amazing, amazing service that they're offering. I think you're empowering so many people to take their health into their own hands. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you so much for being here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Gina.
Thanks for listening to the Healthy in Real Life podcast. For more info, check out Gina's blog at fitnessista.com.